CC, regular expressions are a powerful tool that is valuable, for everyone, programmer or not, to learn. Regex is a language for describing search patterns of text. This can help you quickly achieve complex tasks that would otherwise be tedious or time-consuming. We'll cover the basic rules and syntax to get everyone started, then introduce some more advanced topics and end with some powerful examples. And then, positive reinforcement dog training is a method for training where you tell your dog what you want it to do by rewarding it for good behavior. It is extremely effective for capturing and shaping desired behaviors. We'll cover research in this field and basic methods for working with a clicker and treats. This will end with a probably pre-recorded, but honestly, folks, I'm hoping that he tries it live, demo of my dog's trick repertoire. So without any further ado, cyberingcc, over to you.
Cool. I have good news. I did not get to edit a pre-recorded video, so it will be a live demo and it will probably be a total disaster. We'll give that a shot toward the end. And right now, let's talk about regular expressions. So I will go ahead and present here and hope, let's see, can we do full screen? Oh, well, close enough. So this is Regex and Dogs, and who am I? I am a security researcher. I've been doing this stuff for about 7 years. I am kind of like an obsessive programmer, and I like solving security problems with code or problems in the security space. I do a lot of reverse engineering. I do a lot of program analysis, and recently I've been doing a lot of binary instrumentation, which is like reverse engineering with code. So you're kind of looking at applications as they run. I also make some YouTube videos. I am putting together very slowly a free security course on YouTube. You can get that, the course index at cyberingcc. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just a very blank page that links to all my videos. And you can follow me on Twitter at cyberingcc, like the URL with no period. So let's talk about regex. Can I do, what's the full screen command? F11? Yeah, there we go. So why regex? So regex is the one thing that I would teach to everyone if I could. It is super powerful. It's basically like find and replace on steroids. So it is a language for matching text. And then there is also some features for replacing text, which I will very briefly mention at the end. But even if you're never going to program or you're never going to get into InfoSec, like if your boss gives you a spreadsheet and it's like find a bunch of like first names and last names in here and swap the last name and first name in this like comma separated list, very easy to do with regex, kind of a pain to do manually. Could take hours or days to do that on a large list, can take an instant with regex. So it is also something I really use every day. Just cleaning up code, replacing tabs with spaces or spaces with tabs, depending on the file. Manipulating stuff on the command line. It's just something that is so common. So I'm very happy to be showing it to you. For the InfoSec community, it is also used in Yara, which is like a malware detection rule format. It's used in Snort, which is an IDS, so network detection rule format. It's, I'm sure, available in every sort of log review thing you have. I've never really worked with those though, so I can't say for certain. It's in all your text editors and IDEs. I use it a lot in programming if I need to like swap data around or kind of do change multiple lines at once or replace a variable name with a variable name I like more. So yeah, it's there. It's on your command line with utilities like grep or sed. And it's in word processors, kinda. I think like Microsoft Word has like a pseudo regex thing going on in there. And it's also in a lot of programming languages. So here it is in Sublime Text. You enable it with your little dot star here. Here it is in VS Code. You can enable it by clicking the dot star here. Here's an excerpt from the grep manual page where you can use the capital P command line switch or flag to give it a regular expression to match. Here it is in JavaScript. Here it is in Python. It is everywhere. So very, very useful thing, very universal thing. So it's very much like Control F. So you can, you've used Control F, you just find things, you type in your strings and it'll match it. So if we typed in dogs here, it's going to match the string DOGS. But it has a lot of special characters and operators to make it more useful. So for example, there's an OR operator. So in this case, we're matching dogs with a pipe character and then cats, and that indicates an or. So that's going to match anything that has dogs or cats. And that pipe character, if you are not super familiar with it, because it is kind of a rare one, it is like the shift backslash, so shift above the enter key. And that's going to allow you to match multiple things. So in this case, yeah, we did dogs or cats. And then if we move on from there, there is a dot character. So this is really the any character match. So that's going to match any character twice. So there's two of them, and then it's going to be followed by S and then T. So in this case, there's two S and T's in there, and then we're going to match the two characters before those two. So we'll get BEST and XIST. It is denoted by a period, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but that's kind of a wild card. So then, since we don't necessarily want, like, we wanted to match like a 7 any characters, wouldn't really want to type like ... So in that case, we have length modifiers. So this first one is a star, and that means match 0 or more. And we saw a couple slides ago, the dot star is kind of the universal symbol for regex because it just means match anything. So we're matching the any character, and then our length modifier is saying we're matching 0 or more any characters. So that's just going to give us basically everything in our selection. In a lot of text editors, it does it by line. So in this case, it would basically find every line for you. So what we can do then is use that as a prefix. So if we did like dot star dogs, it would match 0 more characters and then the strings dogs. So we match our first line with 0 characters before it with dogs. And then we also match our last line with everything before it with dogs in it. So if you're trying to select everything up to like a certain delimiter, like a comma or something like that, or a tab, you could do dot star comma, dot star tab, and that's going to select everything for you up into that point, well, up into and including your kind of terminating character there. So what if you don't want 0 and you actually want 1 or more? You can use the plus, and that's going to be a length modifier that gives you 1 or more. So in this case, it doesn't match the first dogs because there are no characters before that, but it will match those ones, the have I mentioned dogs, because have I mentioned is more than 1 character. So yeah, that basically sets a lower bound for you. Oh, that didn't scale to this full screen mode, but this length modifier, you can give it brackets and then a lower bound and upper bound, and they're inclusive. So if we said EX or BE, and then followed by any character repeated 2 to 3 times. So that's a range. So it's going to go from 2, if you give it 2 to 10, it's going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 characters. So in this case, it's going to match EX or BE, followed by ST for the 2 characters till it hits the end of the line, or IST for the 3 characters. So that's the range. That's useful when you aren't just trying to get as much as you can, and instead have a very specific size. And we will see an example of that in a little bit. So the first application we have is going to be finding URLs. So very simply, like I use this, I shouldn't say it, but I use this when like web scraping. Generally, when you're web scraping, you should be using an HTML parser and actually pulling things out correctly. But a lot of times you want to do things quick and dirty. So if you want to recover the URLs out of a file really quick, you can write a regex to pull them out. So in this case, we have 4 URLs and their IP addresses. And say we don't want the IP addresses, we just want to find the URLs. We can do an https:// .star, and that's going to match the rest of the URL. And that will, of course, ignore all the IP addresses because they do not start with HTTPS. What I usually do with this is like do a find all, and that will highlight them all, and then you can just copy them out, open a new file, and paste them all in, and that kind of can extract stuff out of a file for you. So yeah, the next thing is special characters. So we have our dot character, and that matches any character. But what if we actually want to match a period? So if we did 4 dot and 4 any character, that's going to match for these 4 dots in here, but it's also going to match like 4 4 or 4 2 or 4 0 because it is the any character. So the spoiler is that you use a backslash. So there's a concept of escape characters. And so to escape a character, you can use a backslash, and there are a bunch of these. So this is not a complete list, but like backslash dot will match an actual period, backslash backslash if you want to match an actual backslash. And then you have your new line and tab characters, which if you program, they come up quite a bit for formatting strings and stuff like that. But then regex also has its own kind of character classes or special character classes as a convenience for you. So for example, you have word characters, which are like the lowercase letters, the uppercase letters, the numbers, and underscores. Is it the numbers? I should double check that. But so that's like if you had, if you wanted to match kind of, chunks of words, you can just use a backslash W. You can also capitalize these to match the opposite of that. So if you wanted everything that wasn't word characters, you could do a backslash capital W. Same things for space characters, which match tabs, spaces, and new lines. You could do a backslash capital S to get everything that isn't spaces. And then there's digits and anti-digits and stuff, and there's a bunch more that you can look up. But that's the idea of escaping. So if you're ever running into a problem where you're trying to match something, but it is treating it as a special character, you can look up the escapes for it. So, and here is another example. So this is one that gets used a lot. This isn't a great IP address matching regex, but we can use it for this example. Like it's one of those things where if I was trying to find regex or trying to pull out IPs from a file, this is something that I could write, and as long as it works, it works. And then if I needed something to actually like validate IP addresses, I would go to Stack Overflow and find the most advanced regex for that. But to break this down, it is a digit, so backslash D, repeated 1 to 3 times. So that is like our first octet of the IP address, followed by an escaped period. And then that's just going to be repeated 3 times. So we could actually make this a lot smaller with repetition and putting parentheses around this. But for the most part, it's just we're matching 1 to 3 digits, period, 1 to 3 digits, period, 1 to 3 digits, period, 1 to 3 digits. So that is a super useful thing for that. So now there are character classes. So we have our kind of built-in backslash W, backslash S for character classes, but what if we wanted to do a custom one? So what if we wanted to match lowercase letters only? So you can just define a range in brackets. You can also just list characters out. So if you only wanted to match A, B, C, D, you could do brackets A, B, C, D, and that would match those. Or you can give ranges, which is generally what I end up doing. So we have brackets A through Z, and that's going to be all the lowercase letters, followed by an escaped period. Followed by com or cc, and that is going to match all our URLs excluding the HTTPS. Here's another application. This is one I really like. So if you're taking maybe the SHA-256 or using SHA-256 sum on the command line and getting SHA-256s, the output won't necessarily be so clean. I think that utility returns the file name followed by the SHA-256, and usually I do not care about the file name. So you can pipe this to grep with the regular expression to match hex digits, so 0 through 9, lowercase a through f, capital A through f, repeated for 64 characters, and that's going to match our our SHA-256 hashes here. Oh, here's an example. So if we did a SHA-256 of all the malware.exes in our malware folder, and then we can pipe that to grep and say the -O is we only want what we match, and the capital P is to say this is a PCRE. So Perl compatible regular expression, and we pass it our regex for hex characters of 64 length. Then that will go ahead and find these hashes. The capital A through F are clearly not necessary here because it's lowercase, but sometimes I forget, and sometimes the hashes are in different formats and are capitalized, not from the same utility, but that's just, I always throw it in there as a safety. So there is also much more. There's things you can do. So you can do an optional match. and that's a question mark. So if we wanted to match HTTP : or HTTPS : we wouldn't necessarily need to use the or. We can just say the S is optional in that case. So we have HTTP and optional S and then : and that will match HTTP or HTTPS. The question mark is a little confusing because it can also be used after a length modifier to be stingy. So by their nature, regular expressions are greedy. They will try to match as much as they can. So if you had like tab character ** tab, and you were just trying to get something between two tabs, and there were multiple tabs on the line, it would find the two tabs that are furthest away from each other. But if you add a question mark on the length modifier, the star, it will actually try to match as few as possible. So that'll find a tab as few characters as it can, and then another tab. So that's a very useful thing. You can also anchor your matches to the beginning of the line or the end of the line. So the caret is beginning of the line. So if you wanted to only find URLs that were at the start of the line, you could do a caret and then HTTPS : and that would only match things at the beginning. You can use the same thing for end of the line with a $sign. So if you only wanted to find punctuation that was before the end of the line, you could make a character class for punctuation, throw a $sign on the end, and that would match everything at the end of the line. You can also, and the caret's another ambiguous one, not ambiguous, but multiple uses. So if you have a character class, so the square brackets, and you can negate it using the caret. So if I had a square brackets, caret, comma, square bracket, one or more match, that's going to match anything that is not a comma. So that's another useful thing. So if you're matching, say, URLs in HTML, you could do, I want to match HTTPS, and then I want to match everything that's not a quote, or like I want to match href equals quote, and then everything that's not a quote up to the next quote. And that's going to be a good way to kind of pull out the stuff between two delimiters. So then you have look aheads and look behinds, which I will not cover in this, but those are basically zero length matches that assert that something is in front or behind of a match, or not in front and not behind a match. So there's also negative look aheads and negative look behinds. So that would be like, if you wanted HTTPS : in front of the URL, but you did not want to actually capture the HTTPS in your match, you could use a positive look behind to say there's an HTTPS here, or a positive look ahead to say there's an HTTPS here, and then what we want to match. And then the last thing is you can use variables in replacements. So every time you use parentheses, unless you specifically mark it to be a non-capturing group, it will capture it and kind of save it as a variable. So then when you go to replace things, you can use those variables, which would be like \1 or $1, depending on the syntax that you're using or the program that you're using. But you could say, like, if you captured HTTP or HTTPS in the first parentheses, and then you went to use the replace, you could use \1 to put that in the replacement. So I hope that made sense without a slide or a visual, but it's possible, and when you need it, you can look it up, and the answers are all there. So that moves us on to dogs. So I had two dogs. One passed away a couple weeks ago, and he was a super good dog. So this talk goes out to Raylan. But the idea was, when I got him and I knew nothing about dog training, and then my girlfriend learned a ton about dog training and taught me good dog training. And so he really grew up using positive reinforcement training. And now my dog Ava, she is who is getting all the attention currently, and she is who's being trained. So what is positive reinforcement training? It is it's rewarding your dogs for behavior you want. I guess this is the overview, so I won't get into that yet, but we're going to cover positive reinforcement training using a clicker, and then dog body language. I will drive home that your dog probably needs exercise, and then we will get a demo, and that will be a lot of fun. So basically the idea is, through training, you're communicating with your dog. And a lot of people operate kind of by telling their dogs what they want, what they don't want them to do. So like, no, don't do that. Don't get in the trash. No, don't chew that up. No, don't do this. And that's really kind of hard for your dog to understand a negative. And we'll see why, but like the science is that telling your dog what you want them to be doing is much easier for them to understand, and you can kind of capture what they should be doing and reward them for that, and that makes the connection in their brain very well. So this can be from everything from potty training to tricks. So for potty training, you're giving your dogs treats when they're using the restroom outside, and they're like, hey, this is where I should be using the restroom. This is awesome. And then from tricks, it's giving your dog rewards for doing a behavior, or you're capturing a behavior, and we'll get more into that. So the kind of psychological science behind this, I want to cover this because it's in the psychology community. Positive and negative mean different things. And in terms of operant conditioning, which is what this is called, positive means giving something and negative means taking something away. It does not necessarily mean good reinforcement or bad reinforcement. So classical conditioning is like Pavlov's dogs. It's associating an involuntary response to a stimulus. So in that case, it was they're giving the dogs a treat and ringing a bell. And then the classical conditioning is when they ring the bell, the dog starts salivating, which is involuntary response. And it's been associated with a stimulus, which was the bell. So operant conditioning is associating a voluntary behavior with a consequence. And that consequence with positive reinforcement is giving them a reward. So the consequences, positive means giving something and negative means taking something away. And reinforcement encourages a behavior and punishment discourages a behavior. So we see that in a chart. Positive reinforcement is adding a good stimulus to encourage a behavior, or adding a stimulus to encourage a behavior, but that is generally a good thing because it's a reward. For positive punishment, it means giving a punishment, and punishment is discouraging a bad behavior. So positive punishment is adding a negative stimulus, or sorry, I should say adding a bad, to not confuse the terms, but adding a bad stimulus to discourage behavior. And I'll have examples of these on the next slide. Negative reinforcement is removing a bad stimulus to encourage a behavior. So you're encouraging the behavior through reinforcement, but you're removing something bad in order to encourage it. And negative punishment, which sounds the worst, but it's actually up there with positive reinforcement, it's removing a good stimulus to discourage a behavior. So what are some examples of those? So positive reinforcement, giving your dog a treat when they sit. That's going to associate sitting with a good thing, and they will continue to do it. A positive punishment is giving your dog a shock when it barks. And so that's giving something, but the thing is discouraging their behavior. A negative reinforcement, so negative reinforcement is like taking away a negative stimulus or a bad stimulus when they do what you want. So it would be like continuing to yell at your dog until they went into their crate. So it's like they have a negative stimulus or a bad stimulus and it stops when they do the thing. And then negative punishment is like if your dog was greeting someone and you didn't want them to jump when they greeted. Your dog jumps on the person they're greeting, and that person just turns around and walks away. They turn their back on them. So the dog doesn't get the enjoyment of meeting someone new. They don't get the reward of being petted there. It's just like the excitement of seeing someone new stops when they misbehave. So that is actually a very common tool. So when our dog was a puppy, he would bite our legs. If he bit our legs, we would turn around and walk away, or he'd bite our clothing. When he did that, we'd turn around and walk away. And that would train him like, oh, I was super excited, so I was biting them, but when I did bite them, they walked away. So I should stop doing that so I get to see them because they're what I'm excited about. So most of this will focus on positive reinforcement because that is what is used the most. So it's basically rewarding your dog with something it loves. So this could be food, it could be praise, it could be attention, it could be play, it could be toys. You see a lot of trick dogs when they after they finish like an agility routine, after they finish a like fly ball run, they are rewarded with a toy. Disc dogs, same, like if they're going after frisbees, after they do that really well, they'll get to play with a toy. So it's basically rewarding your dog for the behaviors that you want. And some dogs are not motivated by food. They're not motivated by much of anything. And hopefully if they're not motivated by anything, they're not getting into much trouble either. But most dogs are going to care about food, or they're going to care about a toy, or they're going to care about your praise. So once again, it's just communicating how you want your dog to be acting, and it's setting your dog kind of up for success, because then they know what you want them to be doing. And I guess the other point with setting them up for success is making sure they're like well exercised and things like that. And then the last bullet is just about negative punishment. It's removing the things that lead to undesired behavior. So if your trash is in the kitchen and it's uncovered and it just smells so good, maybe get a cover for it, maybe put it in another room, maybe put it in a cupboard, and that removes a stimulus that is leading to your dog maybe getting into the trash. So that's the gist of it. It's backed up. It's really well regarded. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior, they recommend that training should focus on reinforcing desired behaviors, removing the reinforcer for inappropriate behaviors, and addressing the emotional state and environmental conditions driving the undesirable behavior. So that's yeah, I think there's a lot of community backing in this right now, and this is kind of where dog training is at, and hopefully moves more towards in the future. So what you often do is clicker training, and I should have had a clicker with me, but it's basically a device that makes a like noise. And so what you do is you pair that with food. So they call it priming the clicker or charging the clicker. So it's basically you make a click when you first get it and you give your dog a treat. You make a click, give your dog a treat. And your dog's going to associate like, oh, this click is the reward sound. So once it's primed and once it's charged like that, you can use it to mark the exact moment of good behavior. Maybe you're training your dog for a wait or a stay from very far away. You can't necessarily train that and give them food right away, but you can use the clicker at a distance to say, okay, you waited the duration I want, here's your click, that's a reward, then you can release them and they can come get a treat. But it gives them that exact moment in their mind where they can associate like, I just did a good thing. This is what they wanted me to do. I nailed it, and now I'm going to get a reward for it. So it's really used to mark a like precise moment. So the dog's then rewarded, and it's used in way more than dogs. You can use it to train cats. You can use it to train dolphins. You can use it to train horses. You can use it to train chickens. And the chickens actually used to be an advanced dog seminar. I don't think they're offering it anymore, but they would bring dog trainers and have them train chickens, because the chickens they had no sense, or they didn't respond at all to any sort of kind of punishment or negative reinforcement. So you really just had to be shaping their behavior with food and clicks. So that was kind of like an advanced method, because dogs can kind of understand how you're feeling, and if you're mad at them. The chickens were like made you kind of into a pure positive trainer. So there's two modes of positive reinforcement training. One is capturing a desired behavior. So what I did for my dog, he kind of grew up at work with me, so I needed him to behave well at work. Otherwise, it was very embarrassing if he was barking and kind of not acceptable. So when he would lay under my desk, when he would settle down, I would sneak him a treat. And like when he would kind of like lay down and then exhale and like let all his tension out, I would give him a treat to say like, oh, you're relaxing. This is a great thing to do. And that method's called capturing calmness. It's capturing a behavior he's already doing, but it's reinforcing it. So then he kind of learns like, okay, my job is to lay down and like hang out and relax. My job isn't to like guard your cubicle. My job isn't to chew on your computer wires. My job is just to like chill here and hang, like this is my spot. And then you can also capture tricks. So say you're training your dog and you're just waiting for them to offer something, and then out of nowhere they do like a big jump and spin around. You can click and capture that behavior, and that's what capturing is. It's taking something your dog is offering and using it and encouraging it, I guess. So the other one is called shaping. And this is much more common. So say you are going to ask your dog to sit. You might have a treat in your hand and you move it towards their face so they back up, and look up, and then eventually they'll sit down. Then as soon as they sit, you pair the behavior with the command sit, maybe you click, and then you give the dog the treat to reward the behavior. So that's shaping your dog into the sitting position and then rewarding the behavior. So you're kind of encouraging it, and then you back off of that slowly. So it's like maybe you won't push the treat in their face and see if they offer the sit, and then you can capture it more and more. But yeah, it also associates a word or a hand signal at the time that they do it. So they put all those pieces together in their mind, like, oh, this word means do this behavior, and that means I get a treat. Like they'll connect the dots there. Another example, a more advanced example, is hold an item. So hold, and that's when they hold an item in their mouth. So you might have a clicker and you might put an object on the floor, and they look at it at first. They're just like, what's this? You click for them paying attention to it. And then you start raising the criteria. So maybe the next session you'll click if they go over and touch it with their nose. Then the next one, if they start chewing on it, like, okay, yeah, that's good, that's what I want. And then you kind of withdraw that and raise the criteria again. So the next thing you would do is maybe they'd be picking up the object. So then they pick up the object and you're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted you to do. You click that. So hopefully the next time they start offering picking up the object, you just keep increasing the duration longer and longer for them to hold it, and then increasing that hold duration. And eventually they're going to have hold. So that's the idea behind shaping, is you're slowly shaping the behaviors that you want them to be doing. And yeah, it's most powerful, I think, in trick. And then I think capturing is good for kind of like calmness and things like this. Another big one.
Just FYI, about 10 minutes left for you.
Cool. I'm pretty close to finishing. 2 more slides, and then I'll do a disaster of a demo.
Right on.
Cool. So the last thing is dog body language, or the second to last thing is dog body language. The dogs have a lot of calming signals, and I see so often people post online, it's like, oh, look how cute this is, when it's like squinting or like whale eyeing at you, and it's like, okay, it actually looks kind of nervous. So these are a good thing to learn, especially when you're like training your dog. Because if they're yawning, if they're lip licking, like whenever I pull out my phone and stick it in my dog's face, she gives a yawn, and it's like, okay, you don't like that. I should probably be pairing it with treats. So she might lick her lips, and that's something telling you to kind of calm down. Whale eyes or side eyes can indicate nervousness, like they're not looking directly at you, but they're scared enough that they're trying to keep their eyes on you, or not scared, but nervous enough that they're trying to keep their eyes on you. They might turn their head away and avoid your gaze. The squinting and appeasement happens a lot. And then sniffing is avoidance. So if you're taking your dog and it's like you're asking it to do something, it's like, oh, I'm just going to sniff over here, but there's nothing really to sniff over there. It might just be kind of avoiding that situation. And flattening the ears is another big one. So when we got Ava, she must have been abused before we got her, because I couldn't even grab her collar without her peeing on the floor. And that's something for me that's kind of shocking, because it's like, okay, this dog has been conditioned like very seriously that I can't grab her collar without her peeing. So it really, like, while I felt like, oh, I'm not doing anything to hurt you, I'm not abusing you or anything like that, it was very scary for her in that situation. And like now with her and I play very rough. She'll gnaw on me, I'll push her around and grab her skin and stuff like that. And I think it's a lot easier to hurt a dog's feelings than it is to hurt a dog. So that's something, is when you're training dogs and when you're working with dogs, you really have to keep your emotions in check, because it's like you might be having a bad day, you might be mad, and you might, while you're not hitting your dog or hurting it, like you might also be angry and directing that toward the dog. And I think that can be very damaging. So keep your emotions in check when training your dogs and working with your dogs and walking your dogs. And yeah, just build that really positive relationship. The last thing is when if your dog's misbehaving, really look at the energy levels. So exercise is so key. Like very, very often, like if the dog's going crazy, it's often just not getting enough exercise. So for example, my dog Ava, she barks super loud, or she can bark super loud. If she's not exercised, she will bark at anything and it hurts your ears. But if you take her for like a long walk, she'll sleep the rest of the day. So if she gets that level of exercise, she'll be calm throughout the day. So yeah, for that, it's recommended long walks, jogs, plain fetch. For dogs less than 1 year old, you don't want to take them for runs or anything because their joints are still developing. But if your dog's more than 1 year old, yeah, you can death march it in the nicest way possible. So here's a demo. I'm gonna try to pull up my webcam so I can make sure that I can see the setup here. So give me a minute to get this set up. Show all webcams. Here we go. I will try to get this on my floor so we can see the dog.
It may take a second for the camera to show up for folks on the link, on the webinar rather. There's
Cool.
been delays.
Is the camera not?
I don't see it yet myself. Oh, hold on, maybe, no.
Video is not showing up.
Let me see if there's anything that needs to be done on this end. Oh, well, something changed.
Do you see a dog? Do you see a floor?
Several people say they can see it. Okay.
Cool. That works for me. So I was going to have a nice grand finale with a backstall, but Ava hurt her leg earlier, so I will not try to do that. But let's try to get her in frame here. Ava, here. Ava, can you sit? You're back. Okay, come on, turn around. Sit. Okay, can you sit up? Sit up. Good sit up. Good girl. Can you lay down? Can you put your head down? That's very good. She just offers her head down now. Head down. Very good. Can you roll over? Oh, up. Come here. Down. Give it down. She's playing dead, so okay. Sit. Down. That's what you wanted to do. Good girl. That's a good play dead. And then, can you stand up? Can you counter? Can you clock? Can you side? Good girl. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that will be the extent of the demo. Normally she also jumps on my back, but since her back leg is a little hurt, I don't want her flying off the ground like that. So hopefully that was enjoyable, but that a lot of credit in that goes to my girlfriend, who is the real talent of dog trainer in the family.
Do you think you could do us a favor and post a video sometime of your dog doing these tricks?
Cool. Yeah, I will. I'll post that to my YouTube channel sometime. And
could you tell us what your YouTube channel is?
Yeah, so if you go to, the easiest way to get to it is going to https://cybering.cc. That'll have a link there. But my YouTube channel, I believe I have the URL cybering. So like youtube.com/c/cybering should get to it as well. But yeah, the cyberingcc URL is kind of my index that has all that stuff.
Fantastic. There have been a couple of questions. There's one regex question,
cool.
But I think perhaps it may be something better to answer on Twitter, because there's no way I'm going to be able to read that coherently enough for you to answer it here.
I'll give it a shot. Is it the?
It's about div tags in. I was stumped recently using regex to parse HTML, which is, I know, a bit of a warning sign for those of us who understand the difficulties there. They were trying to find all the div class equals namex tags in a block, but they needed to deal with nested div within that. Any suggestions?
Use an HTML parser in that case. Yeah, nesting is going to be very difficult. So you could maybe do a stingy match. So maybe you're not going beyond what you want. So that's like the $*? And so it'll match as little as possible between a div tag and then the class attribute. But really in that case, like grab something, if you're using Python, grab beautiful soup and parse the HTML, and then go and find those elements with CSS selectors.
Fantastic, yeah. So there's a couple of dog questions.
Oh yeah.
Number one person asks, does this work on cats?
Yes, it should. I don't have a cat, but I've seen people saying that you can use clicker training with cats. What was that? And lions and tigers, my girlfriend says. So it works on big cats as well. So absolutely give it a shot. Get some treats that your cat loves. Pair it with a clicker, and I'm sure there's a ton of YouTube videos on it.
Fantastic. And this other person has asked, what if your dog forgets a trick? Mine keeps forgetting dead. Do you have any tips?
I think it's just spaced repetition. So same that you do when you're learning with flashcards is kind of making sure that you reinforce it every couple of days or every week until it's really driven in there. But yeah, besides that, sometimes dogs only have so much they can fit in their head, and there's a couple good smells outside they want to remember too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good smells outside we all are interested in these days.
Yeah, especially now when we can't go outside.
Right on, right on. I don't see, well, most of the other questions are about video, which, yeah, video on this stream has been a little bit flaky today. Terribly sorry about that. Uh, I have recorded what I can for this one, and I've asked our lovely presenter, Cybering here, to post the video to YouTube when able, because, well, I actually feel a little sad because I didn't get to see the dog.
Oh, what's your Twitter handle? I'll tweet it at you.
Oh, I'm muted.
Okay.
Right on. Awesome. So, thank you very much for. Oh, we've got one more. One person's asking if they can teach other tricks to the dog, but that I think you kind of covered earlier with observing for desired behavior and rewarding it.
What was
Alrighty.
it? Can you teach other tricks to the dog?
Yeah, they want to know if the dog can learn other tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, this can be used to get almost every behavior. And I think if you search whatever behavior or whatever trick you want on YouTube and maybe a guide to positive reinforcement for that specifically, people make those. A really good channel is called Kiko Pup. She's kind of the positive reinforcement guru out there.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much for this fascinating talk with, I have to say, the title that I've liked the most.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching and tuning in. I will talk to you all hopefully online.
All right. Well, that has been cybering.cc with his presentation on Regex and Dogs. Bear with me just a moment while I reset the video, and we'll go ahead and get started in just a few minutes with our next presenter. This is PancakesCon Track 2.